Okay, so Dr. Hutchins has been through, if you look at your table of organelles of the cell, okay, Dr. Hutchins has been through all the different types of organelles. I get to deal with the last one, which are the mitochondria. Now, you've probably been introduced up to this point. You've heard of these organelles as the powerhouses of our cell, or the location where we do our energy production. Now, this gets a little complicated, so I need you to pay close attention to the steps we go through. And I want you to pay attention to, okay, what's happening, where am I, okay, what are my products, how is it happening? And this is one of those concepts where if you kind of go over it enough, eventually the light clicks on and you're like, well, why was that so difficult? It really wasn't that difficult of a concept. And that's typically what students say as we go through this. Is, well, once it clicked, it's not that hard. And that's true. It's just you have to spend enough time, okay, for that to be the case. So on your table of organelles, so we're going to deal with the bottom one. Okay, we're going to deal with the mitochondrion, okay, mitochondria being plural, which is our location of energy production. Now, if you think about it, remember we talked ad nauseum, okay, forever about structure denoting function, that we have particular structure, therefore determining certain function. That is important to kind of understand as it relates to mitochondria and mitochondrial numbers. If you think about certain types of cells, and we haven't discussed a lot about tissue yet, tissue and cells, but if you think about it, there are cells in our body that need a great deal of energy. And there are cells in our body that need substantially less energy. You look at a muscle cell. It's constantly contracting. Therefore, it needs large amounts of energy. Therefore, we need large amounts of energy molecules. Therefore, we need large amounts of mitochondria. So if we kind of compare, and that's what this slide is kind of looking at, if you compare the number of mitochondria in skin cells versus muscle cells, well, it's going to be a lot higher in muscle cells. Now, do we still do active transport inside skin cells? Okay, well, not the dead ones, but the developing skin cells? Well, sure we do. But not as much as we need in terms of ATP production for muscle cells. Bone versus nerve cells. Well, nerves are constantly sending signals from one location to another. Therefore, they need large amounts of ATP, therefore larger numbers of mitochondria to produce those. Okay, red cells and white cells, okay, they require ATP to facilitate, well, red cells, not well, specifically white cells, because we're using them in terms of phagocytosis, which is one of our active transport processes. So when we talk about metabolism, we talk about energy production, the molecule we always come back to, okay, is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So you don't want to think of it, or I don't think you want to think of it. ATP is not energy. ATP is an energy-containing molecule, and I think if you can make that distinction, it makes it a little bit easier in terms of what we're trying to talk about. Now, if you look at the structure of the mitochondria, you'll notice that it has double walls. It has an outer organelle membrane and then a folded inner membrane. Okay, now I've reinforced that a little bit before. Anytime you see something in the body that's folded, there's a reason it's folded. It's where we want a lot of things to be able to happen, and we don't want to occupy a whole lot of space to do it. And so by those membranes inside the mitochondria being folded, you know I'm going to have a whole bunch of stuff going on inside that mitochondria, and I'm going to fold that membrane so I've got lots of surface area but occupy very little volume. So it goes into that surface to volume ratio we've talked about. We want lots of things to be available but not occupy a whole lot of space. Now, it's interesting because of our need for the formation of mitochondria actually have their own DNA. So when you see written a little M next to it, DNA, that's mitochondrial DNA. And it has the ability, we can replicate our mitochondria uniquely instead of having to just replicate the cell. So we can replicate that DNA.